Hello everyone, my name's Paul West and I'm on a journey to show you some of the incredible flavours of the Eurobodalla. Today, I'm in Bateman's Bay at the Wray Street oyster shed where we're going to meet multiple generation farmer Jade. We're going to try some of the delicious rock oysters that come out of this estuary. We're tasting Eurobodalla and it's going to be great. So Jade, how long have you been farming here in Bateman's Bay?
So I'm a 5th generation oyster farmer. So 4 generations of that is in the Clyde River. Our first generation actually was Tuncurry Foster, but luckily for us, they decided to move down here and this is where my family get to work.
So that's your great-great-grandparents were here and
Yep,
your great-great-great-grandparents were oyster farmers.
Yep, that's right.
So you know a thing or two about oysters.
I would hope so.
By now.
By now, yeah. I can take my oil plates off.
How old were you when you shucked your first oyster?
I think I was about 6, so Mum and Dad had an opening room in the backyard, so they got one built, and I'll go down and help Mum and Dad out opening oysters. Yeah.
And what kind of oysters are you growing here?
So we grow the Sydney Rock, and we have grown them for the 5 generations. Just in the last 7 years, we've started growing the Pacific oyster as well.
So why Eurobodalla for you, Jade?
I mean, I love this area. I love everything that it has about it. So we've got those beautiful beaches. As I said, we've got the state forest where you can go on your walking trails. But the food is so fresh, and there are so many spots that you can go to, whether it be the berry farm where you can pick your own berries, our oysters, you know, there's just so much. There's honey, like, what better place to have that than the Eurobodalla?
We're pretty spoiled.
We are. Spoiled for choice, that's right.
Well, let's go do some shucking.
Let's get on to it, hey?
So Jade, what makes a good oyster to you?
So for me, one is size does matter with oysters. So it doesn't always have to be a big one. Yes. But the smaller they are, we sort of find there's a sweetness to the oyster. As the oyster ages and gets larger, it becomes richer and creamier in flavour and texture and that sort of thing. So want a nice deep cup. Unfortunately, this guy is a little bit anemic, but hopefully in size he'll be a good one inside. So good technique for shucking, good knife.
Yes.
So I teach people both ways. So you can come in from the top hinge, just wiggle the knife in. So a good way to know that in there is the knife will hold itself up. So I'm not doing anything there. So
no
from
strings
this stage,
attached.
no strings. We're all good. From this, what we do is we push the handle down, bring the blade up, so you're inside the oyster there. And then using the knife and the top of the shell, run it along the top of the shell, and you're cutting that abductor muscle from the top. So that's where I find the sweetness comes. Obviously done a bit of a shonky job there.
I don't know about that. I was just about to say it looks like you've done that before, Jade.
Then run the knife along the bottom, so you're cutting that muscle from the bottom. Now, what you want to see is a beautiful amount. Look at that liquor that's in there, you know, that seawater.
Oh, just for me.
That's for you.
So good.
Get in, I've got a few here, so.
So good. Never gets old. So
I'll just keep going.
Yeah, please, this is great.
Just feed you.
If you could play the violin as well and maybe a little bottle of champagne, Jade, that would be great. When it comes to oysters, I feel like they're perfect straight out of the water. They're the ultimate raw ingredient that you don't really need to do anything with. But sometimes I like to, you know, get a little bit fancy. Like we all do. Not all the time, sometimes. And when I do, I like to keep it nice and simple and make a little bit of a dressing. So if I want to bring out the best in an oyster, I want to think about balancing the flavour and maybe adding a little bit of texture, because an oyster is a homogeneous texture. So I want something that's going to add a little bit of crunch and a little bit of counterpoint to that, the softness of the mollusc muscle. So I'm going to use some cucumber in there, which is just a fantastic summer fruit. It's crunchy, it's watery, and it'll be a really nice contrast to the texture of the oyster flesh. Same with a very finely diced shallot. Again, just a nice little bit of crunch in there to contrast. And so this is the kind of recipe that I would like to use with summer oysters when they start to get fatter and creamier, because I want to balance out that fattiness with a little bit of acidity. And when they get fattier and creamier, they tend to lose a little bit of that oceanic complexity. So I'm going to use a little bit of balsamic vinegar in this case to add a little bit of complexity to the fattiness and a little bit of oil just to enrich it. I've got this lovely cucumber, just going to gently top and tail it there, just to get the woody bits off the end. Split it in half down the middle. I'm going to take this spoon and just scrape the watery and seedy parts out of the middle. And just cutting lengthways, I'm going to cut along the cucumber like so. And really what we want to end up with is a nice fine dice of cucumber. So I'm going to turn it on its side there. And then going as finely as I can, cut along like this. Digger. You know something's going right when as soon as you start to chop up food, Digger appears. He's a very discerning palate for a canine, and already he's given his stamp of approval to this dish. So we can see there we've got a nice, really fine dice of cucumber. So I'll pop that in our bowl with which to make the dressing. So that's half a Lebanese cucumber. To that, I'm going to add the dice of 1 shallot or French eschalot. So just chop that in half from stem to root ball. Peel off just that first outer layer. We don't want to waste any. I like to get the yellow core out because it detracts from the flavour. And on this one too. The key is to use a knife that's way too big for the job for doing something like this. A paring knife would suffice, but I've only got my monstrous chef's blade at hand. So we'll just keep, again, just want to get that outer layer, just the thin papery layer, wasting nothing. There we go, pop that over there. And then I'll take just that little papery tip off, and then cutting with the grain of the shallot, chop through it like this. And back in like so. And then I'll chop over it nice and fine, just like we did with the cucumber. So just because I've got a dozen here, we'll just do half a cucumber and half a shallot. We'll take our spoon and give that a little bit of a mix around. And you know when you're on the right path with cooking, when something looks visually appealing already. Our eyes are one of the most important digestive organs that we have, because food has to look good immediately to start the digestive process. And when you've got texture and colour like you've got in here, our brain goes, oh yes please, that looks good. Give that a little bit of a stir through. So the shallot and the cucumber is going to add a nice bit of texture, a nice bit of crunch, which the oyster is lacking, unless you get shell grit, but no grit in these ones. Then a little bit of oil, just to enrich the whole dressing. You don't need too much. I always like to use something like an extra virgin olive oil, because I find that the pepperiness and the grassiness of an extra virgin olive oil complements the marine saline flavour of an oyster. And then of course just a little bit of fresh parsley, just to give it a nice herbaceous note as well. All very complementary to the flavour of the oyster. You could alternatively use coriander or something like that if you want it in there, but parsley works the best. So we'll finally chop that. Just shredded. Cut that down as fine as you can. Pop that in there. Give the knife a bit of a clean. Okay, stir that through. Might just add a little bit more oil now there. I don't want it to be swimming in oil, but I do want oil to be evenly coated over all those ingredients. And so in the bowl now, I've got my chopped up cucumber, the shallots, parsley, a lick of olive oil, and I'm just going to add a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Not too much, but oysters love acidity because they're such a fatty, salty flavour. A little bit of acidity, whether it's from lemon or Tabasco or vinegar, really lifts the flavour. And really, the dressing is as simple as that. And I find that something like this, if you have to cook anything with your oysters, a really simple vinaigrette, a little bit of crunch, a little bit of texture, some complex acidic flavour is all you need. And really, again, I can't stress enough, the number one way to eat oysters is next to the lease they were grown on, with next to nothing at all on them. And so there we have it, delicious rock oysters out of the Clyde River estuary with a cucumber and balsamic vinegar dressing. Doesn't get much better than that. That's my lunch. Sorry Jade, not enough for you.